It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story tonight. The British cruise missiles being delivered to Ukraine, the most powerful weapon yet to help defeat Russia's invasion. As Ukraine's forces prepare for their counter-assault, Russia warns the UK's decision will require an answer from its military. Also tonight, Sky News learns that Sue Gray, who investigated Downing Street parties before leaving to work for Labour's leader, had personal contact with the Partygate's inquiry's Labour chair. Betting the House on the Bank of England's reputation, the criticism of its predictions as it raises interest rates again.
You keep getting it wrong. I mean, is the simple truth here that basically the bank isn't very good at forecasting?
I don't agree with that.
Plus, we report from Texas, where Donald Trump's restrictions on migrant border crossings are about to expire. Look, no hands on board the UK's first self-driving bus, taking passengers from next week. And we'll be taking a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 tonight. Hi there, very good evening to you. The most powerful weapons yet provided to Ukraine by the UK are already in the country tonight. Cruise missiles which could strike at Russian depots and command posts deep inside occupied land. The Defence Secretary said the government was providing them because Ukraine had the right to defend itself. Russia, though, warned it had a very negative attitude to the deployment. It comes ahead of an expected counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces and will be live in the country in a moment. First, though, our security and defence editor Deborah Haynes reports.
Breaking down a new barrier when it comes to arming Ukraine. The UK has donated long-range missiles in defiance of concern about Russia's response. This old promotion video giving a sense of the weapon's impact.
The use of Storm Shadow will allow Ukraine to push back Russian forces based within Ukrainian sovereign territory.
The Defence Secretary told MPs the UK's modern missiles are being fitted to Ukraine's old aircraft, a difficult and time-consuming task.
I'm not going to comment on when we expect these to be used, but nevertheless, they have yet to be tested and we will soon find out.
Storm Shadow is a precision-guided cruise missile launched from the air. It carries a warhead weighing up to 1,000 pounds, is 5 metres in length and can hit a target at a range of more than 155 miles. The weapon is powerful enough to punch through reinforced concrete and could be used to hit underground bunkers, command headquarters and weapon supplies. A Ukrainian military source said to me this decision by the UK could be a game changer. He said the Russians had learnt to move their weapon stores and command posts out of the range of the rockets the Ukrainians have. But these new missiles will give Ukraine the ability to strike much deeper into Russian-held territory, even in theory as far as the bridge that connects the captured Crimean Peninsula with Russia. The British move prompted a menacing message from Moscow. On the front line, though, the UK's missiles will be a big boost for Ukraine as the fighting grinds on ahead of an expected counteroffensive. Officials hope other allies will follow suit.
This is not the first time when UK takes a lead on life or death decisions for Ukraine, and then the rest follows. We have seen it since the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
The UK has fired Storm Shadow missiles multiple times against its enemies. These Typhoon jets were preparing to hit Islamic State targets in the Middle East. Attaching the weapons to Ukrainian aircraft is a whole new level of risk, but also potentially reward. Deborah Haynes, Sky News.
Well, our international correspondent Alex Rossi is in Ukraine tonight. We can speak to him now. And Alex, how close do you think the Ukrainians are now to having the military hardware that they think they need to launch this counteroffensive?
I think the training, the hardware that they need, it is all coming together. It is very close now. How imminent exactly is unclear. We've been hearing an interview from President Zelensky where he has said they're not quite ready yet. They're still waiting for armoured vehicles because although the troops are trained and ready to go, they fear that they'd lose people they wouldn't have to lose if they just waited a bit longer. So that is something that they can't really countenance. Having said that, it may be misdirection, it may be feint. It's not just the physical battlefield that is being contested. The information space is also being contested as well. Certainly on Russian Telegram channels, they are reporting, they claim that the counteroffensive has already started. Now, troops that we're speaking to along the line of contact, which stretches for hundreds of miles, they are saying that the fighting has become more intense, particularly around the city of Bakhmut. People will remember that, a symbol really of the hell and horror of this war. One brigade there told us that one of their operations, they managed to take back about 3 square miles of land. Now, whether or not they can hold that, we don't know. It may be that what we are seeing at the moment are just shaping operations before the main push that is still to come. But the Ukrainians know that they do need to get this right. They fear, the leadership here, that if they don't have some kind of success, political support in the West may be more difficult to sustain going forwards.
OK, Alex, for now, thank you very much. Sky News has learned that the senior civil servant who investigated lockdown parties in Downing Street had personal contact with the Labour chair of the committee investigating Boris Johnson. Sue Gray was later appointed Sir Keir Starmer's new chief of staff, though she hasn't yet been able to take up the post. Our political correspondent, Joe Pike, broke that story tonight, and he joins us now. What more have you learned, Joe?
Well, Emma, what is interesting about this is it concerns 2 prominent women who've led different Partygate-related inquiries. First of all, as you say, Harriet Harman, veteran Labour MP, who's the current chair of the ongoing parliamentary inquiry into whether Boris Johnson misled MPs over Partygate. The second individual is Sue Gray, as you say, the senior civil servant who wrote the internal government report into what had happened in Number 10 and in the Cabinet Office, as you say, now planning to take a job with Labour and Keir Starmer. Sky News can reveal that the 2 individuals last year, after Sue Gray's report came out in the early stages of the parliamentary inquiry, were in direct personal contact. One source remembers Harriet Harman saying, "I just speak to Sue," making it clear that the contact seemingly was regular and reasonably close. Now, why does this matter? Some would argue, of course, these 2 individuals investigating similar things would talk. It would be strange if they hadn't talked. That's certainly the implication from the Privileges Committee, who've released this statement to Sky News tonight. It was, they say, the duty of the chair to make contact with anyone, including Sue Gray, who might be able to indicate potential witnesses. The only evidence the committee will rely on is that which is separately and independently verified by the relevant witness. The Privileges Committee is not relying on evidence gathered by Sue Gray. The other opinion, of course, including from allies of Boris Johnson, is that there is potentially a significant conflict of interest and questions for Harriet Harman to answer. That's certainly the view of the former Cabinet Minister, Jacob Rees-Mogg.
As this is all about strict accuracy and whether things are misleading or not misleading, the chairman had a duty to the committee to be very, very strictly and straightforwardly accurate. And the question has to be asked, did she achieve this?
We should stress there is no suggestion that Harriet Harman was aware that Labour were trying to recruit Sue Gray before Sky News broke the story, and also no suggestion that Sue Gray spoke to Harriet Harman after first being approached by the Labour Party and Keir Starmer. But certainly, potentially, Emma, questions to answer. And of course, that Privileges Committee in the building behind me does still continue. We're waiting to hear their final report, whether they believe Boris Johnson has misled Parliament, and indeed if there will be a punishment if he has.
OK, Joe, for now, thank you. Millions of mortgage holders still face the worst of rising interest rates, the Bank of England's governor warned today. Because so many people remain on their original fixed deals, around 2/3 of the pain is still to be felt. Andrew Bailey was speaking after the bank raised interest rates to 4.5%, but also raised its forecast of UK growth. There are, though, questions over the bank's predictions, as our economics editor, Ed Conway, reports.
When the world
There's a bit amiss. There's plenty amiss with the economy right now, but there's always solace in music. They're setting up for the night at the Phoenix Arts Club in London's Soho, but even here, the cost of living crisis is hard to escape.
The costs are just rising and rising. We work with several suppliers across food and beverage, across electricity, gas, all of the standard utilities that everyone pays, really. But add a zero or a couple of zeros to that, and that's what it looks like for a small business. It's quite scary, actually.
And for many households, especially those with mortgages, especially those about to refix their loans, it is scary. And the bank, which has raised rates again to 4.5%, says there's more pain to come.
We know that by the end of this year, there will be a lot more mortgages that will reset because fixed rate periods will end.
So it's coming for millions of households.
And so we factor that in.
So how much of the pain have we had so far on that, and how much is yet to come?
In terms of resetting and adjustments, it's probably not more, about a third.
But just in terms of what families can expect, so there is still 2/3 of the kind of interest rate related pain yet to come.
There's quite a large portion of mortgages yet to reset.
That pain, that monetary squeeze, is what mortgage brokers around the country are now having to help deliver. It's not easy.
It can be more stressful. The pressure on people to make quick decisions is hard. Any more rate increases are going to be quite hard to manage for a lot of households in the UK. Not only the mortgages going up, obviously the bills have gone up with that as well.
Still, there was some good news from the bank. Now, surprising as it might sound given the economic climate, the bank has just delivered the biggest upgrade to their economic growth forecast that they have ever seen. The issue is they are starting from such a miserable place that where they are now is basically just about flatlining. The deeper issue, though, for this institution is they've got so many of their forecasts wrong in the past that people are asking whether they can actually rely on them at all. The governor denies there's a credibility problem. You keep getting it wrong. I mean, is the simple truth here that basically the bank isn't very good at forecasting?
I don't agree with that. We're experiencing huge external shocks. Those external shocks are, frankly, not something you can forecast as such.
Things like the war.
Something like the war, you can't forecast wars.
But the bank was missing its forecasts before the war. It was missing its forecasts before the big rise in gas prices.
Because there was an impact from
in 2021.
There was an impact from COVID on what we tend to call supply chains.
Regardless of whether it was foreseeable, the upshot is we're all poorer, says the bank. A tough message for those working hard to make a living.
I feel poorer, and it's not like we have crazy expensive lifestyles anyway.
Living costs have gone up, electricity, gas. Like you say, commute here is not cheap at all. I wish it was.
At some point, the economy will recover. At some point, the news will get better. But the latest message from the bank is not quite yet. Ed Conway, Sky News.
Pakistan's Supreme Court ordered the release of Imran Khan today, saying his arrest was unlawful. The government's information minister, though, defended the former Prime Minister's detention in an interview with Sky News. Imran Khan's arrest 2 days ago led to protests and violence across the country. Our correspondent, Cordelia Lynch, is in Islamabad and sent us this report.
2 days after his sudden arrest, a sudden turnaround for Imran Khan. The Supreme Court ruling it was illegal and ordering his release, but the government can't see the problem.
Do you have faith in your Supreme Court?
As an institution, yes. As individuals, I have questions.
Are you suggesting that the Supreme Court
No, I'm
has
not
made
suggesting.
a political
as
decision?
I said, the Supreme Court as an institution, I'm not saying anything because there are judges. I'm talking about the individuals and the perception when such orders are made. And after the order, it is my constitutional right to analyze the order, to discuss the order, to cite the order, or to criticize the order.
Would you like to see Mr. Khan detained tomorrow?
Well, it's up to the court. As I said, the government is not part of this arrest. It's a National Accountability Bureau, the court, and the Islamabad High Court. Let's see what Islamabad High Court does tomorrow.
Do you recognise that there are peaceful people that believe the way that Imran Khan was arrested was unlawful, unacceptable, a stain on the country?
I did not see those peaceful peoples on the streets in the last 3 days.
There are ways to arrest someone
Tell me.
calmly
Tell me
and
how.
peacefully
No.
doesn't
A
require
person,
an armed ambush.
No, the person, as I said, a person who defies law of the land, if it's not Imran Khan, if it's anybody, I ask you the question, in your country also, a conduct of a person is as such, what will the police do?
Now the case goes to the High Court, which must decide whether to grant bail. So the stage is set for another dramatic chapter in the Imran Khan story. He has a night at least to enjoy some freedom, to rally his troops and to decide on his next steps. But we've seen how quickly that freedom can be taken away. In this tense climate, it's hard to imagine any result will go unchallenged. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Islamabad, Pakistan.
The country's most controversial rail franchise will reach the end of the line later on this month, with the government taking TransPennine Express back into public control. Passengers that we spoke to today were delighted, but the Transport Secretary warned that nationalisation isn't a silver bullet. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso reports.
Finally, TransPennine Express passengers have a cancellation they can celebrate. The end of the company's contract to run services across the north.
Really unreliable. All the trains, I travel to Manchester and Liverpool quite a lot, and the trains across the north they're rubbish. They're just rubbish.
Frustrating, I would say, because oftentimes I get to work late and that doesn't speak well of me.
It's about time that a lot of the companies get nationalised. This is hopefully for me the first of many.
After months of disruption, services between Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds and Hull will come under state control when its contract expires at the end of the month.
To achieve the performance levels I expect that passengers deserve and that the northern economy needs, it's clear that both the contract and the underlying relationships must be reset.
TransPennine Express, owned by First Group, has overseen huge disruption, with up to 1 in 4 services cancelled every day, to the frustration of commuters and fury of northern mayors.
It has been a catalogue of misery, people moving house, changing jobs, losing opportunities, choosing a different university because they know they can't get there, not taking up opportunities for culture because they don't know if they can get home, missing funerals. It has been unacceptable.
TransPennine is the 4th franchise to come under state control, reflecting the weakness of a railway that's effectively been government-run since the pandemic.
TransPennine Express has a dreadful record, and it's come to symbolise the wider failings of the rail network. That sense the national infrastructure just doesn't work as well as it should, and the gap between transport investment between north and south. But just because the government's taking over, there's no guarantee it's going to get any better.
A failure to recruit and train drivers, compounded by industrial disputes, is at the heart of TransPennine's problems. Northern business is desperate for a solution.
We need a government that's going to deliver HS2, that's going to deliver Northern Powerhouse Rail across the Pennines. At the moment, we can't even deliver the limited number of services we actually could run between our northern cities, and it just isn't good enough.
This week will end with yet more strikes across the network, affecting Eurovision, among other weekend plans. A good job commuters have learned to be patient. Paul Kelso, Sky News in Leeds.
The Business Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, has been on the receiving end of an angry telling off by the Speaker of the House of Commons. Ms Badenoch was explaining why she wrote about the government's decision not to scrap all EU laws in an article in the Daily Telegraph before she presented it to the Commons.
Who do you think you're speaking to, Secretary of State? I don't want. I think we need to understand each other. I am the defender of this House and these benches on both sides. I am not going to be spoken to by a Secretary of State who is absolutely not accepting my ruling.
Now, the former US President Donald Trump made the perception of a threat from south of the border a central part of his appeal to the American public. Tonight, a restriction on migrants that he brought in during the pandemic comes to an end, and the now presidential candidate has said it will be a day of infamy. For those trying to make a new life in America, though, it could be a day of worry. Sky's US correspondent James Matthews has sent us this report from El Paso in Texas.
Here, the sun rises on a crisis every day. This is the border wall where America touches Mexico and is gripped by an emergency on immigration. This was the day that saw a changing of the law. The end of the so-called Title 42 that's seen a surge in migrants towards the United States. Like this. It was the scene we saw at the border where El Paso in Texas meets Mexico. These were migrants who'd made it before the midnight hour when Title 42 expires. They were among record numbers for cross-border entries this week, over 11,000 in a single day. This was how it looked at San Isidro, across the border from California. And this was the Mexican town of Juarez. At Matamoros in Mexico, migrants, young and old, swam the river that separates the town from Texas on the last day of Title 42. America's immigration difficulties are writ large on the streets of El Paso. We met Wilmer and Yandel from Venezuela with a 2027 court date for an asylum hearing. The 4-year backlog measures a broken system.
What I've pulled out here are the immigration papers with the court dates, which are set for 2027. The hearing with the judge is at 8:30. What we need is bus fares so that we can get to our destination and begin working. I want to leave already, because look at the situation we're in. We're sleeping on the floor and eating whatever we can manage to get a hold of.
In a hostel across town, they were disinfecting camp beds. Here they accommodate people with young families. It's America, but it's a long way from journey's end. For people like Mariela Rivas from Venezuela.
Well, my journey has been a little tough because I'm alone with my children. And while I've had scary experiences, no one has helped me on my way over here. No one has tried to help me.
The politics of this are as intractable as the problem itself. Successive U.S. administrations have struggled with the immigration issue that is big and getting bigger. It has been a defining election issue. It will be again. Amidst the political noise, El Paso feels neglected.
I just think that everybody is focused on what they want and nobody's listening, and that's okay. But now it's like, let's sit down and have a voice of reason here.
On the Mexican mountains across the wall, they've written, "Read the Bible, it's the truth." On the US side, they can't handle the truth of an immigration system beyond efficient control. Title 42 or not, lasting solutions remain a distant dream.
And James joins us from El Paso tonight. And James, we saw, of course, the human impact of migration in your report there, but yet again, it's also having a huge political impact in America.
Yeah, a defining issue in elections past and present because of the sheer weight of numbers now arriving over the border. 11,000 in 2 consecutive days. That's a record for this particular part of the border. And it matters to more people, to more Americans. Here in El Paso, migrants who turn up here in Texas are bussed on, flown on to cities like New York, Chicago, and Denver. So it does matter. Not just on a human level, but also clearly on a political level. That's certainly the way that Donald Trump wants the situation to unfold. Listen to him on American television last night.
We've become a third world nation. At this very moment, illegal aliens are lined up by the tens of thousands, ready to break into our country, knowing that even if they are caught, Joe Biden will order them immediately released into American communities, and many of these people are very dangerous. Under Biden, our border is gone, our sovereignty is gone, our national security is gone, and we are quickly becoming that third world nation that I've been talking about for so long.
Donald Trump there speaking on his social media platform, Truth Social. So not an easy problem, clearly, for the politicians trying to handle this humanitarian crisis. Certainly not an easy problem for the human beings at the very heart of it.
OK, James, for now, thank you. West Ham have come from behind to take a 2-1 lead in the second leg of their Europa Conference League to semi-final with AZ Alkmaar. The Dutch side led at half-time, but West Ham came back in the second half to equalise through a Saïd Benrahma penalty. Then Michail Antonio scored a close-range winner 15 minutes from time. The second leg is next Thursday. Now, move over Elon Musk. The Tesla billionaire may have championed self-driving cars, but commuters in Edinburgh will from next week be able to board a self-driving bus. It does have a supervisor just in case it's needed, but as our Scotland correspondent Colin Gillis discovered, it was a case of look, no hands.
It is the nervous moment defying everything drivers are taught. No hands on the wheel. The first self-drive bus in the world. Innovative sensors are doing the job of humans, guiding this 9-ton single-decker through the roads at 50 miles an hour, the initial route over the iconic Forth Road Bridge between Fife and Edinburgh.
This is a strange experience. Usually you would be sitting down, relaxing, not having to think about anything, but you can't help but look at every twist and turn this bus is making. There are members of staff on board, though. A safety driver sits in the cab monitoring proceedings, while another member of staff on board looks after the customer experience.
Key member of the team is the safety driver, and that's driven by two reasons. So for legislation, we need to have a safety driver in the cab, and also where there's elements of the route that the technology will hand the control of the bus back to the driver, we must always have a driver.
Does that not defeat the purpose, though?
No, because it's the whole point of the Cab Forth project is about enhancing the technology.
Bosses say there is global interest in this Scottish product. Buyers standing by in Dubai and Tokyo. This may be transport innovation in action, but will passengers come looking to get involved?
Yeah, amazing. That's like Back to the Future stuff.
I don't know if I would go on that, to be quite honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not?
I just don't know if I would trust it.
Technology is so advanced, but you just never know.
This glimpse of the future begins on Monday, with pilot services carrying the first passengers on this 14-mile stretch. Conor Gillis, Sky News, near Edinburgh.